I just sent my kids to school today. They are ready. They have their field day today. So they are saying, I think here in Georgia, we have a week and a half left. So next Wednesday, my kids will be out. Yay.
Not how we roll out them in the Northeast. So know your audience, my friend. Know your audience.
Hey, we have that nice August 1st start date, though, when it's like 1,000,000 degrees in the South. So, you know. We are so excited to have everybody back here today for cohort session number, where we're at, number 6 right now?
Correct.
Oh, we are really at the final countdown because we have, what, one more left, right?
Welcome June, yeah.
Oh, wow. So once again, the link is in the chat. Is it in the chat? Yes, it's in the chat. So the link is in the chat for our agenda for today. So make sure you grab that. If you are late getting in, we'll drop that one more time so everybody can get that. As always, all of the resources are linked off of the agenda there, and we'll make sure that everything is updated. A recording of today's session will be on the cohort page probably this afternoon. All right, so once again, our goals of this cohort are pretty simple today. We want to make sure that we maximize your time while you're in this session. So we're going to start off today with our welcome, our collaborative questions. Our focus for today's gears will be the use of space and time. We'll focus in on that one today. And then we'll have opportunities to work as we had in the past in our large group and small groups. And then we really want to have some time today for you to kind of share out your progress and where you are so we can build our notes and kind of get stronger together from this one. And we will have, of course, our break. We want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to stand and stretch. And when after that, we'll have some time to work in our district groups together. And then we'll focus on after our break, we'll focus on any of the other gears that we've been working on. So we'll focus on the additional gears that we have to try to get ready for our final session that we have coming up. And then we will go through all of our resources and the links and how to get to those so you can work on building out your plan on there. And we'll get you out here promptly at 11. So once again, thank you for giving up some of your time today. So first things first, we want to get into our collaborative questions for the group. So we got a question in and we want to make sure we can pitch it out to the group and get some feedback for this one. So we were asked, what are you using for your PD? So I know some districts have used Frontline for their PD, tracking their PD. I know previously I've used Frontline as their product. It used to be what, Edivate, PD 360, all that fun stuff. So posing it out to the group, what are you using to track your PD in your district? Feel free to kind of share with the group right now. I see, Tom, you have something you want to add on that one?
Yeah, I think the question, and Owen, I'm going to go back to you. Owen, you had thrown this one out, so we're going to put it out to the group. But I think, Adam, I think it was more of like PD providers, not necessarily
a PD provider
on that one. Yeah. Owen, can I put you on the spot? I think you're here, Owen, right?
This is SAU 67, and Owen is missing in action.
Oh, is he? Yeah, he had asked a question. I guess you all were looking at like Rocket PD, and there was another one. And I said, why don't we just bring it to the group as an opening question? So I don't know if anybody from your team wants to jump in there and give any more specifics. If not, we can open up to the group for what folks are using or what they found, or, like what we've had a bad experience with this one too, and you're welcome to just be real, right? That's our goal here with the collaboration. So anybody else from your team want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I believe it was Mobile Mind and Rocket PD were the two.
Yeah, that's two that specifically asked about, so we bring to the group. Did I do that justice, 67?
Well,
or you're saying we don't know? That was Owen's question, not ours. Hey, and that's okay too. That's all right too.
Yeah, we sat in on a demo of Mobile Mine, and it looked okay, but it's incredibly expensive. We're using Frontline, which is good for tracking, but is really bad for delivering content. So we're looking at maybe merging it with some other products, I guess. Great. But I'll check out Schools Vector.
Yeah, I guess for anybody else in the group, are you using any companies like that for some of your professional learning at scale? Obviously, a lot of folks I'm sure are doing kind of like, bring somebody in for a day type of thing, but also, I guess really at scale for a variety of areas. Any groups able to jump in and just speak to experience, positive or negative, just to support 67 on that.
Yep. So this is the technical high schools from Connecticut, and I put in the chat that we use it's Safe Schools is the product, and it's we use that for all the online training, but it does the sexual harassment, bloodborne pathogens, like all those standard ones. But also, like, we have the district handbooks that everyone has to read and acknowledge. So we create those as custom courses and we push it out there, and then we run reports by building as to who's completed, who's missing. We do all that. We do all, and we actually use Safe Schools Vector for all. We provide PD to students, and we do that through there as well, through that platform. And then previous to that, we used TEQ, which was a very robust delivery platform, and they had thousands and thousands of audits. So what we would do is we would create a district like top list of by Google, by Marzano, well, all of those of all the ones that we preferred them to use, and that they were at the top load. But we stopped using TEQ only because we only have so many hours in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, can you throw some of those links in the chat just for the benefit of the group?
Yep. I just added the TDQ. I think it's from Otis.
Yep.
Currently. Yep.
That's correct. Yep. And I'll get the Safe Schools and put it up there.
Cool,
Yeah,
thanks.
I've seen some districts have made a transition to using LinkedIn Learning. I believe that's what it is now. It used to be who did they buy out? It was one of the other.
Coursera.
Yeah, it was one of those that they bought out. But I know like LinkedIn Learning has a lot of those online courses around. It's not necessarily education directly, but it's a lot of your PL that you'll have for your Microsoft, Google, and things of that nature. But once again, if you have any resources, please drop those and share. I know teachers love Safe School videos, those bloodborne pathogens. They just can't wait to start off their school year watching all those. And that sexual harassment video is something that's a hit every year with educators.
Don't forget, we are recording this, Adam. And so
When we send ours out, we start ours in the middle of August because teachers just want to get those over and done with. They want them early, actually.
Knock it out. Yeah. Awesome. Joe, thank you for the share. Anybody else speak to any other experience?
A real quick question on that one. Has anyone, thank you for sharing that you pushed it out in August, but does anyone else have any tips or tricks that you have on how to encourage your educators in your systems to take advantage of those opportunities? Because I know that's always one of those things where it's just not enough time in the day. Has anyone had any success utilizing any kind of platform for that personalized professional learning with your teachers?
We had limited success once in the past doing a competition, but that's too expensive to sustain too long. So like we put all the buildings against each other. Whoever earned the most number of hours won a dinner or whatnot. Do you remember that?
I wasn't dating myself.
All right. I know one group was sharing before, but that they did something of that nature, but then it was an issue with their teachers union around the gamification and the competition, and it became an issue with their teachers union around that. I'm not sure if it was anyone on this one that shared that one, or I'm confused that with another conversation that I had, but it's just one of those things where it is a challenge to get teachers to take advantage of those professional learning opportunities, but then you want to make sure that it is something that's targeted and that's focused for each individual teacher. So if you are having those successes in that area as we move forward, feel free to kind of share that with the group as we move forward with that.
Awesome.
Okay, see, was Florence there?
Yeah, and they can't be here today.
All right, cool. All right. All right, so as always, we want to make sure that we bring everything back to our Future Ready framework as we are doing this work, because this is the heart and soul of the work that we're doing here. Keep in mind that it is about making sure that it's a collaborative leadership and we are overarching having that inclusive culture in the work that we're doing. So we've already talked about our curriculum instruction and assessment. That was our first session that we had. And as we just had a little conversation there around that personalized professional learning, ensuring that we are providing educators what they need. Our budget and resources. We want to make sure that we've had that conversation around that. We have worked on that gear and we've made our vision statements and such. Community partnerships. We've talked on that gear already. So we have those plans in place, and robust infrastructure, as I kind of wanted to say earlier, is something that's very important that we've had our conversation around. Data and privacy. As we see, this is something that's kind of popping up time and time again. We want to make sure that we are being good stewards of our students' data and privacy. So our gear today that we're going to really hit the head on is going to be around our use of space and time. So what all entails in this area? This is ensuring that our learning is flexible and that we are providing that anywhere, anytime learning. Also in this is looking at the new pedagogy, our schedules, our learning. This is one of those things that we had an opportunity to change during the pandemic because we were actually forced to kind of change how we did our schedules and how we did learning during that space. So ultimately, we want to make sure that we're looking at what worked during that time period. What were some of those things that we were able to try that did work for us? For some of our students, and are there ways that we can continue to develop those practices moving forward? Now, the environment for personalized learning, what kind of spaces are we setting up for our students within our schools? Do they have those spaces where students can have that possibly a free period, as we call it, where they can utilize the labs to take additional credits virtually? Are we moving toward a competency-based learning profile in our systems? And what strategies are we providing for our students to have extended time to collaborate on projects, or as we talk about having them circle back to previous topics throughout the school year? So really taking our system and looking at, does it really benefit all of our students? And if it doesn't, what things can we kind of change and modify in those spaces? So it's not just, nice furniture, it's also looking at the hours of our school day and how we structure that day around learning. What can we do? When you start talking about your college career readiness, what are we doing is providing those students those opportunities, those real world hands-on experiences within our school day. So really taking what you currently are doing, what's working, and finding those opportunities where we can grow in those spaces is what we really want to focus around, that use of space and time. You want to add anything on that, Tom?
Yeah, the conversation, we take a look here, we get to do a lot of work around this in Future Ready. We can dive deeper as well. There's some really good studies on there on what is it that actually works with this stuff. I just want to be clear. This isn't a conversation on being pretty for Pinterest. This is really about how design impacts the brain and learning from a use of space end. And then the time end, as Adam was saying earlier, how can we start to use time differently? What might that look like? Joe, your team from a CTE end, this is your world, right? You couldn't do it if you didn't completely alter the space to be very real world for your kids. It's fascinating getting to be in so many schools in a given year. When we take a look at just the different spaces, and sometimes in some places, it looks very similar to the way it did 75 years ago. Things have just been updated in terms of painted. In some places, a whole bunch has shifted. But again, this isn't about just going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, because we can spend lots of money on flexible furniture. But if our pedagogy is not shifting, we're really just wasting money. And so we want to bring you out to a school in Western Pennsylvania called Elizabeth Forward to take just a glimpse. This is a district that we've worked really closely with. They've been featured on our Digital Learning Day to just take a glimpse as to some of the things students are saying, some of the ways they've been reprioritizing things. I will tell you, they're not a district that has spent a boatload of money and just, hundreds of thousands of dollars in new furniture and stuff. That's not it. They're also a district that will go after every single grant. And what you're about to see, they actually started with one grant, one space is the way that they funded it and the way they supported it. So let's take you out to about a 5-minute field trip here to Elizabeth Forward in Pennsylvania.
That we are in a real dramatic change in public education.
In the last 100 years, education hasn't changed much.
Schools are so traditional. We have tan walls, desks in rows,
Why?
It's almost like one size fits all.
When you're sitting in an average classroom, you kind of let your mind wander.
You just sit down, stare at the clock, and do your time.
Here at Elizabeth Ford, we are trying to reinvent education.
The world is flying by us, and I think we need to make sure that we're keeping up.
We need to create exciting environments for children to have an opportunity to learn different and creative things.
Our main goal is engaging kids.
We're taking the world that they experience on the outside and are bringing it here. We want to have technologies that the children do not have at home. These spaces that we've created here at Elizabeth Forward High School are new colors, new learning opportunities. That's what gets kids excited about learning. It's about being in school and wanting to come to school. We want them here.
In November of 2011, the Grable Foundation gave us a grant to redo a classroom. This was the start of the changing of the environment in all of our spaces. It's the Entertainment Technology Academy, known as the Gaming Room.
Where all the creative classes and the gaming classes come together.
Got all these different entertainment technology classes for like programming.
I'm taking 3D modeling.
The whole entertainment side of our economy is being taught right here.
These classes are actually being taught in college, so it is a great head start to get it in high school.
This is a cooperative, informal learning environment.
You walk in, you see colorful walls, you see tons of couches.
Well, as you can see, there are no desks in here.
I didn't think this was a classroom. I thought this was sort of like a teacher's lounge or something.
Class sizes are a little bit smaller.
A comfortable environment for learning. It helped me learn more, actually.
Students feel as if it's more about them.
It inspires you to actually give school a shot.
We are really thrilled to have the only small lab in a public school in the nation.
We bring the students here so they have a hands-on experience with everything ranging from language arts, prefixes and suffixes to math skills.
The small lab is a situated multimedia arts learning lab where children come down and experience embodied learning. Embodied learning is a new thought in education, that everything that we remember is through some body experience that we have.
Our children have a hard time with vocabulary. We're trying to teach them that all words are made up of parts, prefixes, suffixes. So they come in and they play a game called Prefix Pagoda.
There's a short throw projector that shines down onto the mat, which projects the software that you're running from a PC. Then you use a tool called a wand.
With the motion capture technology cameras that we have here in the room,
That are picking up a reflection from the wand, and that's how the computer and the camera know which word the student is picking up.
We are in the Elizabeth Ford Media Center. It used to be our high school library. It had probably 60 sets of encyclopedias, 200 dictionaries. It was not very engaging.
It's different from a regular library because I don't think a regular library has like a recording studio where you can go over and like sing or like make raps or come and make a video.
Students can grab a mentor and go in and explore these areas on their own.
We're in a sound studio where basically we record all our music.
We do hip hop, rap. At times I'll try to do R&B.
We're in Elizabeth Ford High School's Media Center in the Visual Arts Studio. And when it first came here, all the students were wowed by it. Everyone comes down here.
I really enjoy working with the green screen and special effects because it's like really fun.
You know, this could actually be something in my future, working with cameras and doing the lights and the sound. Because I guess you can say I'm starting to fall in love with it.
The technology here at Elizabeth Forward High School has created opportunities for students that haven't existed in the past.
It's just remarkable that we get to experience something that's this unique.
We're seeing creativity come alive again in the students.
So important that students who are struggling have another way to learn.
I used to be a compulsory school skipper, but ever since they put the studio in and stuff, I've been here every day.
Freshman year, I had a GPA of .857, and now I started out the year with honor roll.
These things help me learn about what I need to do to get the career I want in my future.
it's the kind of thing that's energized this building and energized the staff.
Students are coming to expect these kinds of learning spaces.
Whatever we want the students to learn, we think that they're going to be able to master those concepts better in these spaces. We're giving the kids technology skills for the future.
We believe that we can have children really change the way they approach education, they look at education. We want to help our children to be engaged in the activities, excited about learning and excited about being in the world that they live in. We believe in kids, and that's really what it's about.
All right. So as we mentioned, if you want that video, it's linked in the chat. So Adam, should we drop it on them? Let's drop it on them. So that video is 9 years old. That's not 2023. That's 2014. So let's have some conversation. And I will give them a lot of credit because they were definitely pushing some of the limits almost a decade ago with some of that stuff. You may have picked, sorry for the dog in the background. You may have picked up on some of the pieces of technology. Someone being like, wait, that's been around for a while, right? That's not so new, or some of those pieces there. Yeah, that was 9 years ago. And so I think using it to capture, looking at space, you could see the connection between some of the technology pieces in the space, making spaces modern for kids, making them relevant for the world in which they're looking in. They definitely used grants. That was some of the pieces to that. They certainly did other things there as well. And I know some of you have been doing these kinds of things as you renovate or as you prioritize. Again, I want to be clear, this isn't about being pretty for Pinterest. It's about creating experiences and places that are going to be really engaging for kids. And what does that look like? There's a lot of research as well in the last number of years that has been done here as well around individualization, around not having spaces that are too cluttered, and that kind of stuff as well. If we had more time, we could probably dive into some of those pieces. But Adam, I'll turn it back over to you for the next conversation. That was 2014, Adam.
Yeah. So with that video that we just watched, I want everybody to just take a second, and we have a couple of questions we want you to think about. So from that video, we want you to think about, what did you notice about that video? Also, what did you wonder? What are you wondering about in that video? And the third question, whose voices should be included when considering space and time? So once again, from the video that you just saw, what did you notice? And from that video, what do you wonder? Like, so keep your space in mind as you're wondering about these things. And then the third question is, whose voices should be included when considering space and time? So does everybody have those three right now? So they're up here right now. So for this one, we want to have a whole group discussion about this one. So we're not going to split you up just yet. We want to kind of have a whole group discussion about this. So feel free to go ahead, unmute yourself, and let's take the first topic, the first question here. So what did you notice about that video?
Good engagement.
The good engagement. All right. What now? For when you say good engagement, are you from who?
From the students.
From the students. Okay.
Adam, I'll contrast that with, and I love one of my favorite lines in that video, and I'm sure there was some other chuckles besides me, was very early on when the one student, high school student, it looked like the boy said something about, I normally just stare at the clock, sit in my seat and do my time, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
I like make it almost a comparison to jail, right?
Yeah. All right, Alec, raise your hand.
Yeah, so what I noticed is that they made the video, and I know that seems like a weird and obvious observation, but they are actively marketing themselves. And I feel like that is a point, especially, my district can work on in terms of showcasing the technology that we do have and we're utilizing. We're not creating these marketing pieces. And honestly, we should be using our students and the current technology classes we have to make those, and we're just not. And I think that's the place I want to go.
Alec, what I love about that is, go back to the community partnerships piece, like the branding idea, right? Sharing your story. Got a couple thoughts there. Number one, it's hard to argue with kids, right? No matter where somebody falls in their community, like, are you going to tell one of those students, like, no, you don't feel like that? Like, it doesn't work. You can't, right? So they expect you, all of you and us, to like speak positively about our districts. Like, that comes with the territory. But when you're hearing it from kids, how this changed my learning, I feel comfortable hearing those, it becomes harder to argue against, right? And so that student voice, I think, is huge. And Alec, to your second point about kids doing this, I work with a group in Oregon, a bunch of principals. And one of the things I'm helping them do, just along the lines of what you're saying, is match some of the like video technology classes because kids are creating social media all the time, right? I mean, many of them, most of them probably. My daughter at 13 years old is creating her own videos, putting them on YouTube. Yes, I'm monitoring it all. But she's like sharing around her horse riding and that kind of thing. so high school for sure, of taking students that are really interested in that to market some of our sports and market some of the clubs and activities by doing something they love doing, to put it out there. So talk about matching like real world examples of social media type of stuff to market what we do, created by kids. Are there some hoops you have to jump through? Of course there are, right? But the opportunity, sometimes we also look at it as like, oh my gosh, I only have one comms person. How are they going to do all this? And I think that's kind of an outdated mindset, right? Of how can students create this kind of thing to be able to share it? Do we have to regulate how we're sharing and who's sharing and how much we're sharing of different things? Of course we do. But taking a look, what a great way to get kids involved for this concept too.
And to that piece also, as we look at budget and resources, a lot of times when we need additional resources, it has to go to the taxpayers at times. And if we only tie our results to test scores, we're setting ourselves up for failure. If we say our one-to-one is going to improve our test scores, or this new multimedia space is going to all of a sudden improve our graduation rates and things of that nature. Yes, and we could tie that into those narratives from the students. So by, as you mentioned earlier, getting that information that out there about how much the students are enjoying and loving those spaces, that's that other narrative that we can really sell to our stakeholders out there about how great school is. And when we talk about teacher retention, when we talk about engagement, I'm pretty sure the teachers are engaged in those spaces as well. Because how cool of a place is it to work when you have all these resources and you're making learning fun? So as an educator, you're talking about, now I'm working in a space where I love to work, where my kids love to work. So that could also improve that. So let's go to the next question here. So what do you wonder?
Adam, I see Peter came off mute. Peter, did you want to jump in there, or did you just unmute? That's all right, Peter. No problem. Sorry. Gotcha.
Sorry, I missed that one
actually,
there.
I did have a wondering.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
You know, those schools looked like they had a lot of space to use, and I'm just trying to like envision how that would work in our schools. There's not a lot of rooms that aren't full of kids already, you know. Most rooms in our schools actually have 30-35 kids in them. So it did make me wonder how something like that might even manifest itself in our like sort of geographical constraints.
Sure. No, and I think, Peter, I think that's a good question, because I can tell you, I've been to Elizabeth Forward, the superintendent and assistant soup you saw there. I know both of them well. I will tell you, they repurposed some spaces and redesigned some programming because they realized some of the things they had been doing in certain spaces just was not relevant. And so some of it was new classroom types of places for new programming that they did to replace outdated programming. So, but I will say, I fully understand. I was a principal of 2 buildings that were 60 years and old and older, and we were pretty confined in what we can do. And so, yes, there's a realistic, like there's a reality to it, right? Unless you start blowing out windows and stuff, you're talking renovations, which is a different scope of some of the things that we can talk about for something like this, I would think, for sure. So I think number one, yeah, you have to be realistic, but number two, sometimes it's looking at the way we're doing things differently to repurpose some of the spaces or whatever it might be. But we're certainly not, naive to the point of like, yeah, sometimes there's realities if you got to play the cards you're dealt, and we certainly get that. But I think looking at each individual space, looking at the programming to say like what could be done there. But I think the student voice, I love RJ's point in there too, of like the student-centered decision-making. And I will tell you, the other piece to that is it was really strong leadership, because Bart and Todd, who I mentioned that I know really well, the soup and the assistant soup there, those folks are incredible leaders that are student-centered, that really looked at it like, what do our kids need, was part of that decision-making. The sound studio is an example, as part of the library, I think had been like a library office type of thing. Well, I say, okay, if we're using a library office, do we really need that space? Can we look at the space differently? Librarians here, don't get mad at me. That was just one example there. And then because the kids saying they were getting into audio and creating music and creating digital technology stuff. And so I think it's sometimes repurposing some of the spaces. But yeah, if you're in a really old building that's really overcrowded, we certainly understand that. It's a hard conversation to have for sure. But thanks for bringing the realistic piece to that. It's a great question.
Alec, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just gonna say when we were talking about limited space, I see someone put in the comments. Adam did. Yeah, repurposing computer labs is a great way. And I recently had an experience where I walked into the media center of a high school. I walked around and we saw how many shelves still had CDs or DVDs, and we actually had a full DVD and VHS room off to the side. And initially, there was some pushback and folks were kind of like, well, look, this is curriculum material. And very quickly, after we looked into the catalog, #1 signed out DVD from the DVD room was Free Willy. And the newest curriculum DVD was like 13 years old. Clearly, there was no reason for any of that stuff to be there. Boom, all of a sudden you have a free room. And it maybe becomes an office space, but that office space that was in the media center now is a greater area for flex. So I would go through. You're going to find rooms full of old chairs and DVDs and all sorts of stuff. You might be able to find a room or two like that.
Great thoughts, great feedback.
All right, so let's go to this last question here. Whose voices should be included when considering space and time? And let me add this caveat. It wasn't really highlighted in that video as well, but also when we think about the spaces, I think spaces was a big focus there, but let's also think about the time. Let's think about what our school day looks like in time when we talk about space and time. I know personally in the district I worked in, we had a conversation around the whole notion of an alternative school. I know when you hear the term alternative school, it's often a place where students go who have difficulty in a traditional school setting that gets into the quote unquote alternative school. But then we were also thinking about changing that structure where, especially some of our secondary students, the traditional hours of a school day just doesn't work for them based on their life situations. We've had students who just can't do a regular school day, whether they are early parents, whether it's their household structure. So could we create within our own school system an alternative school structure to allow them to have those periods where they can come in for one-on-one instruction and also have virtual type instruction as well? This was pre-pandemic. So that is an example also when you look at space and time. What does that time look like? Can your school day change for certain students with certain programs? So I said all that to say this, going to this last question, when you are creating these new spaces in your time, whose voices should you include in your conversations as you are developing and having this conversation around space and time? I'll give you some time.
Hi, I'm Caitlin from Mastery. I think the obvious answer here is students, and I think that's apparent in the video. I think I just want to add one other thought, I guess, which is related to my wondering, which is in addition to like space constraints, one of the challenges that we often have, let's say at the elementary and middle school level, is like the amount of programming we've already put in. So there's not time for like authentic engagement in a way that maybe it appears in the video. It doesn't mean we can't do that. It's just like there's just not an obvious place right now. And so we'd have to really think about like redoing structures and models. And so when I think about that, when I think about this third question about like what voices are involved, I think about also like what our teachers want from that time, because we've sort of like laid out what the programming looks like. It's like during this 90 minutes, you do blank. And if you want to actually authentically incorporate technology, there's a lot more like it's minutes here and there. It's like, even if we can't find a tech room, there's other ways to do it, but it's just not as like obvious in some of our schools and the way we've structured them right now. Just speaking for our own district.
Caitlin, to share from personal experience, one of the things I'm connecting to is looking at structures, right? In the district that I was in 2008 in Pennsylvania, we started our first, it's going to sound funny after the pandemic, we started our own full-time, as a public school in Pennsylvania, we started our own full-time virtual school taught by our teachers with our content. K to 5 looked different because of the content creation piece. But for high school, and the reason I say that is in 2008, we searched the country to try and find another public school that were doing it. I'll tell you, part of the reason that we did it was budget and resources. In Pennsylvania, for kids that we were losing to cyber charters that were meeting needs in different ways than we were, it was $12,000 per regular ed kid, $24,000 for any child with any sort of special needs. So when I walked into the position at district office, we had $2 million in kids that we had to pay for full tuition that we never saw. So my superintendent had the vision to say, let's create different structures. So let me just give you a couple things as an example that we did just to show looking at structures differently. So we launched our full-time virtual program in 2008, 2009, and really recruited a lot of those kids back to help source some of the funding. And then our teachers had some additional flexibility, but what that started to do from a structural end is kids started to say, wait, if I can take an additional virtual class, can I graduate early? We had 3 girls in the 3 years that I helped oversee that at district office that were pregnant, and all 3 of them graduated because we had something different, which also led to a structure at our high school that was a little different because we started to work with our union. So part of the reason I want to say this is voices that need to be heard, and union states are your union leaders. And so we worked with our union to create a multi-structured day at our school. So there was actually 2 start times. You could actually start a period earlier, which gave flexibility for kids that needed to take an additional class or kids that wanted to start early. We had to work with teachers that wanted to come in earlier and they could end earlier. And so there was some issues there for sure, but there was things we had to work through from a structural end. But the other thing that we did is kids, because we had our virtual program, kids could take any combination of face-to-face and virtual classes. So we would have kids that would come in for 2 or 3 periods a day and take the rest virtually at home. We didn't have an issue with that. We wanted to create like this campus, this campus type of feel. Also structurally in 2009, 2010, we were going to a full competency-based mastery model, got rid of valedictorian, got rid of homework, all that kind of stuff. And yes, I've got scars to show all that. The reason I share that is we also completely redesigned summer school and those things where it was based on here's the standards you need, not you get 6 weeks to try and master what you didn't in 10 months, which is just the way we've traditionally done it. Just in our sense was just completely obsolete and made no sense. And so we looked at structures to do all those pieces. And like some of those examples, kids our graduation rates increased, our AP scores increased, a lot of those pieces, but they were structures we had to change, not just we're changing this piece of curriculum over here. And so lots to do with all that, but I think they're all time related and all space related. And that's why I shared some of those few pieces there.
And Tom, one thing that I know we did in the district that I've worked in, we really utilize our summer program. You mentioned summer program as our test run for opportunities that we wanted to try in the regular school year. So we often look at summer programs and the kids love the summer programs because they're like, oh my gosh, we wish regular school could be like this. This is so fun, so engaging. So I think to your point, Caitlin, some of the things that we were looking at possibly changing our schedule or how we structured our school day, we work with our teachers to create our summer program. We called it like Camp Ignite or Camp Adventure or whatever fun name you want to come up with. But it was how our teachers and students wanted to envision a traditional school day. And we would use some of that during our summer programs. And then we say, okay, this could work in a regular school day. So let's bring this component in there, because we also looked at things that were stopping us from having a more impactful, engaging school day. And oftentimes it was structures that we ourselves as a system put in place. It wasn't anything that the quote unquote state was forcing us to do. It was just things that we had always done. And we were going to have to kind of upset the apple cart. So we used our summer programs as a way to kind of test run and get our parents involved, because that's another voice in this conversation to involve. Because if you're changing the dynamics and the structure of what school looks like, parents have to be involved. Because I remember the first time we got rid of books, our parents like freaked out. They were like, oh my gosh, I had books and my kid can't learn without books. You got to give them books. You got to give them books. So we had to go back and we realized we didn't really involve their parents in the conversation of why we were getting rid of so many books because of the e-text and the one-to-one devices and all of that. And so we got a little pushback. So Tom, you were talking about scars. I got some too from those getting rid of some textbooks. So as you are looking at your space and time and changing that, how would you involve parents in that conversation to kind of make sure they're aware of things changing from what they knew at school? Because if school looks the same way it did when you were in school in the 80s or the 60s or the 70s, you know, that's how you expect school to be for your kid too, because in your mentality, it worked for me, so it should work for my kids. So if you're changing that space, you want to make sure you're involving those parents, because you may have some issues where it doesn't work immediately the way you want it to work. And then that's when all the naysayers will come out and kind of push back on these changes that you are making.
So Adam, I think before we go into some small group conversations here we got about 10 or 11 minutes, I've heard union leadership, certainly teachers, students, parents. The other one that I would include, unless there's somebody else wants to jump in, that I would include is other district folks from other places that are doing things differently, right? I think going to another spot, I think in education, we can be really good at telling people how to no longer do things. Like, we can't do it that way anymore. We can't do it the way we've always done it, but we're not always so good. And I'm speaking generally here, at saying this is what it can look like. Watch this. This is what it can be. We're not always good at that side of it. I'm speaking general there. And so I think, you know, going to a place like Elizabeth Forward, going to a place that's just done things differently in a similar structural setup as a school district like yours, I think can be a super helpful piece there as well. Any other final comments there before we put you in a small group?
One question, Tom. At the top, you mentioned some of the brain research for space, which I you know, I'm the chief academic officer. I really appreciate that, and we do consider that a lot. Certainly in terms of pedagogy. Would you be willing to share some of what you're referencing as it relates to space and time? Because I think we do have constraints, but there's little opportunities, right? Like there's like we don't have to like change things overnight. And some of that research, I think, would help engage some of our internal
absolutely.
stakeholders.
I can time wise, like I'll give you a really quick overview, and I can put some additional resources in the cohort hub related to that. Some of the pieces I'll say, number one is around individualization from research. Does the individual feel like they belong in the space? Lots of connections to you know, everything from gender to race to lots of connections there on what a space can do. That's one, and that's called individualization. Another one is around naturalness. The more like nature that we can make a space, the more your body responds to it. That includes things like daylight. And so there's a lot of things that folks can do without spending a penny from use of space and time, like get all the blinds up, because the more we block natural light, look up any connections to natural light and mood. We certainly know mood's connections to learning. However, there's one piece to that where if it becomes a glare in the room, then it's got a negative impact, right? But we often block a lot of our stuff, have blinds down. Researchers get it up, right, on that sense. So that's individualization, that's naturalness. The other one is overstimulation from research. And like, you know, you walk into a classroom, I think about this second grade classroom, I walk in and she was an amazing teacher, but I'm like bobbing and weaving around all the poof balls around the ceiling, right? Like there's no connection between poof balls and learning. And so we got to make the connection, like the brain can only handle so much information at a time, right? And so the more information that's there, if it's not there for learning, why is it there? And so removing a lot of the clutter. I do fully understand what it's like when we look at, hey, if I'm in a room with no windows, can I help anything there? No. I could go on and on and on. We do lots of sessions on that. I will give you, I will put some of the research related to session 6. I'm hesitant to do this because I never want to push my own work, but let me put a link in the chat. Like, it goes with my book, Personal Authentic. I'm really hesitant to do this. I'm not doing it to try and promote my own book. I want to be clear. I always separate that from Future Ready, but I do have a load of resources on the use of space and time that I can do it. And I'll just put it to you now, but then I'll put some of them in the chat. I just want to make sure that the right one is in here real quick, because it's
Tom, you don't want to do it. So I'll do it. So there's this researcher named Thomas C. Murray. He has some really great research around. So I'm gonna ask him to put it in there for you, because I know he would never promote any of his stuff that he has. So I'm gonna ask him to put those tools in there so everyone can benefit from those.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I just never want to on folks.
Thank you.
If it's a good resource, it's a good resource. We want to make sure, of course, the resources are there, that everyone has access to those.
So if you go, there's the direct URL. It goes with my book, Personal Authentic, but you don't need the book, Personal Authentic. I write about spaces and some of the pieces there. But if you scroll down, you'll see some videos related. Actually, the Elizabeth Forward's in there. You'll see some of the videos and stuff that are related that you can use. You'll see some connections to tech, but if you equity, but if you scroll down even further, you'll see a whole bunch of resources on spaces. The first 4 are research related, and then some other pages, some learning space tools and that kind of thing. So you don't need the book to access any of it. Please don't buy my book because I said that. Because again, I'm not here to promote my own personal stuff. So but there's a bunch for you, and we'll put some of those in the cohort hub if that's helpful for you guys. Adam, we need to have that conversation, right? We're looking.
Yep. Let's get them in the groups.
So here's your question. We're going to mix your groups up for a little bit. We're going to give you about 10 minutes. Here's the question we want you to wrestle with. We will take a break shortly after, and then you're going to get back with your district team shortly after. So the question we want you to wrestle with is, how can space and time be leveraged to create a more learner-centered experience? We tried to give you some examples. We tried to show you just one snapshot of one district. The resource that I just put in there has got a load of articles and research studies and that kind of thing that you can dive into for sure. But let's have that conversation. So as always, spend just a minute or two just introducing yourselves, who you are, where you're from, real quick, and then have that conversation. How can space, how can time? Talk about some of the things that you're doing. And the only reason that Adam and I share some of the things we've done is just to give you ideas. It's not a pat on the back of ourselves, just to give you ideas or thoughts of ways and places that places have done that. Adam, anything else final before we put folks in rooms here?
No, let's hop in these groups and get these conversations rolling.
All right, we're going to do 3 breakout rooms. All right, folks, have a good conversation. Let's do, we're only going to do 10 minutes because of time. And then we will take a break shortly thereafter. So quick introductions, and you got 10 minutes. We'll see you in 10. All righty, Adam, we're coming back.
Yes, there's just not enough time. There's not enough time. Always great conversations in those groups.
Yeah, you know how mad they'd be though if we said, "Hey, we're going to do 3-hour sessions every time." People would be like, "Zoom butt is real, right?" But yeah, no, the good conversations there for sure. We're going to take a break in just a few minutes, but would love 1 or 2 share outs, maybe just 1 share out per room. It's just an idea, just a conversation, an idea that you had, just a thought. Anybody want to jump in there from one particular room? Anybody? Actually, let's do it this way, because we got a break coming up. I know you're like, nope, I don't want to be that person. It's like end of the faculty meeting with 1 quick share out per room. First room was Jessica, Joshua, Peter, RJ. Just one thing you talked about, one idea, something that was shared that was neat. Somebody go.
We focused a lot on space. Both districts that were involved in that breakout were a little space constrained, and trying to envision how we can implement some of the concepts while having constraints and not being able to create purposely, broken out rooms for one specific purpose.
Yeah, great point there. And again, I'll point you to some of that, the research piece. I will bring some of that over to the cohort page there as well. And just even looking at sometimes what are the simple changes we can make in classroom that make things a bit more brain friendly is even just a starting pace, and it doesn't cost any money. So certainly understand some of those constraints though. So thank you for sharing that, Peter. Room 2 was Alec, Carla, Jeanette. Can one of you just jump in real quick? And Adam, looks like you were part of that group, but you're not you, Adam.
We discussed just limited space, old space. As you could see, Carla's team is literally meeting out of a closet, something that they brought up. Yep. The state has given them kind of a ruling saying they can't expand anymore. They have modular classrooms. So really the only way to go here is, what Tom talked about, which is kind of like that second shift or staggered schedule in order to meet all these needs. We have the space in our district, but it's very old. And we even have this $2 billion over 10 years construction plan to replace, I think 4 or 5 of our buildings over time. So in that transition, we have similar issues, but kind of from a different end. We got the space, but some of it is unusable, or some of it has very old technology, and we are having an issue investing in it, knowingly that maybe we have to, remove it in 2-3 years. So those are just some of the issues we're dealing with.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Last room, Joe, Caitlin, and 67.
Sure. We talked about also, we spent a lot of time on actually time, talking about how sort of on the middle school and high school level it's a little more flexible, and that it's kind of tough to redistribute time on the elementary level, and those spaces are just still traditionally how you imagine them when you went through. So the time and the space are still consistent, but how do we shift it, especially at that grade level?
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. Adam, any final comments before we take a quick break?
Yeah, one thing that kind of came up in our conversation around that, Joe, it was when you make those changes, also having a plan in place to address the inequities that you're going to create if you are changing a space at a new building and the other buildings are still the same. Or that one building that gets to change and those other elementary buildings that don't, or the middle school or the high school. So also having a plan in place to address anyone who may have an issue with why this school has it and the other schools don't.
Adam, you're hitting on a nerve of mine, because I will tell you, in the district that I was at, you think about what naturally happens, but play this out for me for a moment. You get a lot of new growth in an area, so you get a lot of new neighborhoods in a particular place. Follow my logic here. A lot of new growth, so we need a school out there. We build a new school out there. So in the district that I was at, we had 2 elementary schools built in about a 10-year period in both new areas with new developments that were not cheap. So what happened in my district was the highest income students had the newest schools, and the lowest income students had schools without air conditioning, schools with like very, very little. That's a problem. But you can see how over time that can happen. And so if we're not also asking like, what's the equitable aspect of this, but understanding how budgets work and renovation cycles work and all that, but we've got to be really conscious of that stuff, because if we're not careful, our highest income can get the best of the best and our lowest income not in our own district. And that's what happened in mine. And so just another piece there. It's time for a break. We are 6 minutes over, so we'll condense a little bit this in the afternoon. At least get up, get some coffee. You got 5 minutes. We'll see you in 5, everybody. All right, start coming back. All right, Adam, we ready to go? I'm still on his break. All right, give everybody another 5 seconds or so to get back. You can hear my voice. Come on back. All right, so we want to transition to spending the rest of the time around supporting you as cohort goals, vision statements. And listen, I want to reiterate something. I don't know if I said it last time as well. We don't want you to have stress with this stuff, right? The cohort, as we've been working just through our first meeting together, kind of chunking it out, is to really support you and just helping to take those steps to get there. Some like loving accountability, right? With each time of like, you kind of should have these pieces, but listen, we're not Big Brother out to get you. Like, it's not, I gotcha. It's like, we gotcha, right? And that's how we look at it. So, as we start to look to June and then beyond, listen, we're not like slapping anybody's hand here because, wow, you didn't have something published and already presented to the board on your, like, that is not us at all, right? And so part of it, though, and part of the strength of the cohort and what we want to spend really the rest of this time with today, and then a lot of the time next time, is some of that collaboration, is thinking through things together, giving you a little bit of district time together as well. Obviously, when we only have 2 hours, we can only do that in 10 to 15 minute chunks. We've done that almost every cohort, just giving you some times, just, hey, what do we need to do? What are some of our next steps? So you have some of that time as a small team. So that's what we're going to do next. And then we will move to go back to Adam sharing the schedule, a bigger block. Well, you'll partner up with another district, share here, hey, here's one of the goals that we're thinking about, or one of the gear areas we're focused on. Here's some goals, or we're struggling to come up with something here. Can you have any ideas for us? That's the power in the cohort and creating a space to be able to do that. So in the rest of the time, just be real. Be vulnerable. We're not here to out impress each other by any means. Talk about some of the struggles and ideas, or help each other problem solve some of those pieces. But first, we want to give you some time back as a district team. Obviously, we spent the first hour on spaces and time, right? So what does this mean for you? Take a look at, have you already come up with just kind of that draft statement? What is that going to look like in that area for you? Are you thinking about some goals in this area as well? I want to caveat that with saying, again, as you're developing your plan, don't feel you have to do every area all the time, all the goals. That might work for some of y'all, but as some of the models that we've put on there, some of the plans that have been shared back with us that we've put on there, you'll notice not every district has every goal for every area, and that's okay. Like, you've got to do what's best for you and works for you. But if you are working in this area, what are some of the, what's kind of that vision statement, or at least maybe you want to have that, even if you don't flush out lots of goals before you share something maybe with your community or whatever that looks like. What are some of those goal areas to work through that? And then the other piece you'll see there is pick an area that you want to work with another district on. And we're going to split the time like we did last time, where you can share some stuff with them, get some ideas from them, ask them some questions, help them problem solve, however you want to use that time. Around any gear area. It does not have to be used to space of time. Around any of the goals, it's just meant to collaborate, meant to make some connections there. Adam, anything else before I put them in some groups here?
No, we're good to go.
All right, so I'm going to just give me a moment, put the breakout rooms back in. You know the drill here. Take your group to that room if you could. I'll put us in 9 rooms. Everybody take a look as to where you are going. I'm going to give us, let's say, we'll do about 10 minutes here. So be efficient with your group if you could. Recreate. Give me one moment. You can choose your group number. You know how this rolls. You've got 10 minutes. Again, use of space and time, that vision statement. You want to draft that at all, change that at all. What's that look like? Any of the goal areas you're thinking about, just big picture. Obviously, you only got 10 minutes here. And then what do you want to work with another district on? What do you want some feedback on? What are some of the goals? What do you want to help them brainstorm? You're going to have another district there. Adam, we're pretty clear on that, I think. Any questions before I let you in? All right, you're going to go pick your room as a district team, partner up, have some conversations. You've got 10 minutes. We'll see you in 10. Anybody needs help getting there? Let me know. And Adam, stay with me for a moment if you could. I want to work through something. All right, coming back from your teams. I know some of you are all, and then we're trying to balance. Obviously, you can appreciate some of you, your whole team's in one room or in a closet, right, Carla? And then some of you are individual partnered up together there too. So I always appreciate everybody's flexibility. We try and mix and match and do those pieces. I know that was only a jump start on conversation, some of the next steps, but let's turn it over to Adam. We're going to spend almost the entire rest of the time doing the next piece like we did last time. So Adam.
All right. So cool. So now that you've had a chance to kind of have those conversations around the use of space and time, what we want to do now is give a little time to talk about some of the things that we're currently working on and get a little feedback and support from our peers in this. So what we're going to have, what we're going to do is going to split you up into 2 groups. It'll be 2 groups with 3 districts in there. And you have the chance right now to really kind of talk about and share any of your current opportunities, the problems that you are addressing, and any possible solutions. So what we're going to do for this, we're going to have 10 minutes for one group to share and discuss your opportunities. So when you're doing that, the second and third group will help you solve your particular problem. Then we'll switch, and then another group, the second group will have the opportunity to share, and then groups 1 and 3 will listen, and then we'll wash, rinse, and repeat, and have the third group in turn share. Now, in addition to sharing, we also want some takeaways from that. So we have a Jamboard, and it should be it's on the agenda. We'll add the link in here as well. We did this previously, but what we want you to also do is, as you're having these rich conversations and this discussion, kind of just make a little post-it and share some ideas that you're able to generate from the group in this conversation. So any ideas, anything, any like ahas that you want to like add here, feel free, add it into this. And we want to make sure that everyone has this as a general resource to go back to. So in addition to, as you are adding that particular sticky on the Jamboard, if it's to a particular gear, if you think that that statement you want to add is only for use of space and time, just go ahead and add that abbreviation in there that it's for use of space and time, or if it's for data and privacy, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. If your idea is for a particular gear, make sure to add that to your sticky note. But we want to make sure that we're also just sharing ideas around those problems associated with those gears that you're working through in your future ready process. Tom, anything you want to add to that before we split everybody up?
Nope, we'll just make it easy. Let's just go in the order here so we don't spend any time on who's going to go first or whatever. We want to spend the most of the time on collaborating, getting feedback. So group one in room one, Joe, your team will go first. You get 10 minutes, and then I'll go over to Stanford. Then we'll go over to Mastery Charter. So I'll give you the 10-minute kind of clock. I'll keep track of the clock to keep that. Try and be succinct, everybody, in your feedback. Don't take 8 minutes of the group telling your story and trying to help them, right? We want to give them as much just kind of feedback time as well, and then problem solving together with the other two groups. And then 67, you'll go first, then 83, and then 70, just so that we know kind of the order of each one. We've got about 30 minutes. 30 minutes brings us right to 11 o'clock. So we're going to beg for an additional just 5 minutes after that, so we can point you to some additional resources, things that, yes, they're all on the agenda. So if you need to run, we get it. We'll point you to some other resources that you can copy, that you can paste, that you can use in any of your plans you're using, and all that stuff. So any quick questions before we go? You're going to choose, so New Hampshire, you're going to room 2. Connecticut and Master, you're going to room 1. So I think we are good. You're going to have to choose your room. Everybody knows where they're going. I'm going to set it for 30 minutes, 10 minutes apiece. Any quick questions? All right. Adam and I'll hop in the rooms as we can. We'll see you in a few. All right, Adam, groups are coming. We are at time. We're 1 minute over, Adam, so we better do this quickly before we see a revolt on the other end of Zoom. Let us throw some planning resources your way. They are linked in the agenda. Let us just quickly describe what they are. And by the way, yeah, we hope you found some of that time useful. Conversations I jumped in, utmost, just you're incredible professionals, and it's truly an honor to just listen to you collaborate, listen to what you're doing, and continuing to march forward. And so incredibly proud of the conversations there. All right, planning resources. One is implementation guides. I know we've pointed to them a few times in the agenda. This actually comes from some learning science research we did with Teachers College and NCREST, which is their kind of research area. What we found is when you're connecting these all back to the gears, you may get some ideas for actions to do in the different gear areas there. That's why we're linking them there. They come out of some of the learning science work we did around pandemic time. Another thing that you'll see linked off there is the images. I know one of the teams reached out this week and said, can you point us back to those? So they are linked off the agenda again. We also called them out another time on the cohort hub. So if you look there, all the framework gear images that we've been using in the presentations, they're there as files. You can see a screenshot of that. For some reason you have a hard time finding any of that, let us know. That includes down to like the gear. So if you want to use any of this in your planning, you are more than welcome to. You don't need to ask. You have our permission. You don't need to follow up and ask. A couple of you have done that. Absolutely. What's ours there, you're more than welcome to use, even down to like the little icons that are in the gears. If you find them useful, feel free and have at it there. The other thing that we're linking to, and again, this is just off the framework webpage, really some of the text behind it. In a couple of the plans that we've looked at time and time again, they literally copy and pasted this into like an appendix or whatever it looked like for them. You are welcome to do the same. Certainly probably makes sense to say like from Future Ready Schools or something like that. So nobody thinks that it was just your language, or we can provide the political cover on that. But you're welcome to copy and paste it if you want into any sort of plans, pieces, however you want to do it. We want to be able to support. Mention those implementation guides. Did I just put those twice, Adam? Is that our?
Yeah, it's in there. Yeah, it's good.
Twice. Yeah. All right. So
Yep.
double prepared. All right. Final minute or two. Don't forget, send out the invite for June 5th. I will send out the follow up to this here as well. So we have that. I'll get the video online. So you have that June 5th from 12 to 2. We will spend the majority of the time working through like you just did. Through that. And then anybody that wants to share, again, there's no pressure here, but if you have some preliminary pieces you'd like to share just as kind of in celebration, we'd also love for that as well. That's gonna be very low pressure. Everything's kind of draft oriented. There's no expectation that you're showing up with some like beautiful final piece there. It's okay. We get it. Like, you got a lot of busy time of year, a lot on your plate, and it's more important that you do it well and you're super proud of it and happy of it than you're trying to rush for something for Adam and I. Don't do that. It's not about us. I want to be really clear with that. Again, just the same progression that we've had, kind of working through, obviously now some of the space and time pieces, developing any of those pieces, the draft, continuing to work through that on your plan, what you want it to look like. Don't forget, linked off every single agenda is a whole bunch of models that you can take from, use from, cite from, that kind of stuff there as well. Those are just the pieces we've worked through over the weeks, and that you can have that. Hopefully you've been staying somewhat up to date with those pieces for what's right for you. We will put all of that again in the hub. As we've said, we are 5 minutes over now, so I'm going to give Adam the final word. Adam, what you got?
Oh, now you have me as the person that keeps people from leaving the meeting. But once again, thank you everybody for your openness and your honesty in sharing today. We learned a lot today. I learned a little bit about stakeholders in the last group. We'll be sure to share that information, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the circus. Josh?
I don't know what y'all were doing in that group, Adam. I'm not sure.
It's coming in the fall. It's coming in the fall.
All right. Well, Adam and I can stay on if anybody wants, or anybody has follow-up questions. We can stay on for a few minutes. Somebody else needs anything. Otherwise, we'll see you in a number of weeks. Continue to press forward. We're proud of you all. Reach out anytime as well. So thanks, everybody. We can stay on for a few for anybody that needs it.